Good evening, Council, members of the gallery, and our media friends. I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 9, 2024 regular meeting of Council to order. First up on the agenda is adoption of this evening's agenda. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Mullock. To be as amended, please, to add item 5.3, 2024 to 2034 Canada Community Building Fund Agreement. You're okay with that, Councillor? Councillor, thank you. Any further additions or deletions? All in favor? It's carried. 3.1, adoption of the minutes of the June 25, 2024 regular meeting of Council. Moved by Councillor Mullock, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Are there any omissions or errors or omissions arising? All in favor? It's carried. 3.2, adoption of the minutes of the special meeting of Council being June 19th, 2024. Moved by Councillor Mullock, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Are there any omissions or errors arising? All in favor? It's carried. We do have a delegation this evening under 4.1 from the Columbia Basin Trust. Here with us virtually is President and CEO Johnny Strelayev to give us an organizational update. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Council. It's kind of nice to listen in on some of the pre-meeting banter there, and before I start, I got to say I couldn't agree more. Momentum is definitely the enemy of age, whether that's the ball field, hockey rink, or a staircase. Thank you for the opportunity to join you this evening. As Your Worship introduced, my name is Johnny Strelayev. For those who I have not had the pleasure to meet, I have the privilege of being President and CEO of Columbia Basin Trust. For a period of time, we, the Trust, have been reaching out to local governments at least once a year to offer a bit of an update on the organization. And unfortunately, that rhythm was interrupted by COVID, and it's something we felt it was important to move back into our regular schedule. So that really is the purpose of the discussion today. I have a relatively short slide deck just to touch on some updates on Columbia Basin Trust, but certainly more than anything, I'd welcome any questions, and I hope to have some time at the end to do that, and I do my best to respond. So something of a loose agenda, if that works.
That works just fine, Johnny. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna try share a screen here and see if I get this right.
Great success.
Okay, it is visible.
It is.
Okay, I'm just going to move it into slideshow here. On the cover sheet, you'll note it also mentions Jocelyn Carver, the chair of Columbia Basin Trust. Unfortunately, she's unable to join me this evening. She does pass along her regrets. It's been quite a fascinating year for Columbia Basin Trust. Well, more than a year, in fact, a couple years now. We have been working through an expansive engagement process in an effort to renew our strategic plan, or what we call our Columbia Basin Management Plan. And I know many, probably most on Council, are aware of this effort. It involved community meetings around the region, including, of course, in Valemount. A number of sort of pop-up events, if you will, more online geared engagements, as well as 3 large events that we call symposia and that we held in Cranbrook, Golden, and in Trail, all in an effort to understand from residents what they thought was most important in their communities, what did they value, and how do they see the Trust potentially supporting them in their efforts to continue to make their communities such wonderful places to live. This culmination of that effort was a draft management plan that came forward to the Trust board in February of this year, and I'm very pleased to say the board approved that plan, which has now been made public. And we are in the process of taking what is a strategic plan and developing an implementation framework that really speaks to some of the programs and initiatives that residents can expect to see launched over the coming years. But before I get to that, the plan itself can be seen as broken down into 3 general sections. One are the guiding principles, and these are more kind of fundamental tenets, if you will, that will guide the trust in our work, will underlie all of the ways that we work with and for communities. And I won't repeat them here, they're visible on the slide. And we also wanted to be really explicit in describing the different roles Columbia Basin Trust can play in communities. And the reality is many residents have come to know Columbia Basin Trust as a funder, and certainly that is a big part of the work that we do, but it's not the only part. And in many instances, it's not even the most impactful role we can play. The examples are also laid out here on the slide, and I'll come back to those in a few moments and speak to some examples of this. And the third section really speaks to the focus of our effort, again, at a strategic level. There was an overarching theme that we heard, and it really was across the entire region, that has been summarized to be health and resilience, this desire to not only be healthy and robust today, but take action to make sure our communities continue to be wonderful places, as I mentioned earlier, to live well into the future. And within that overarching theme, we've singled out 4 different areas. The importance of health and resilience of Columbia Basin Trust as an organization, again, a point I'll come back to in a few moments. Maintaining positive, constructive, and collaborative relationships with Basin residents and communities. Speaking of communities, also really working at the local level to understand what residents would like to see happen in their neighborhood and with their neighbors, to make sure that their communities are of the same benefit to their children as they are to them. And then just recognition of the incredible natural environment that we live in, really the envy of much of British Columbia, and dare I say, Canada and beyond as well. So those 4 areas were singled out, again, within the umbrellas, health and resilience, as guiding the trust's efforts over the next 10 years. So if what I just described sounds high level, it is, and it is by intent. It's there to guide us for up to a decade, up till 2034. So during 2024, right now, we're developing an implementation framework. And within that framework, residents could expect to hear about a number of programs that will continue largely unchanged. The READY program is an example of that. And of course, Council will be very familiar with READY. There are a series of other initiatives that might look similar to work that we've done in the past, but they may be amplified. An example in that space will be work that we'll be doing in housing. In the past, the Trust has played a sort of a supportive and funder role. We can expect in the future to be a little bit more active and take on a developer or even contractor role in housing. There will also be a series of new areas of focus, new programs, initiatives, pardon me, in both the near and longer term. And we'll start announcing or sharing information on these suites of programs really later this fall and into winter, and then of course over time as they are launched and we start to communicate at the community level around what it is we hope to support and how it is we can achieve their objectives together. So that's sort of a strategic update, if you will, on Columbia Basin Trust. But of course, the big machine keeps working. So notwithstanding all of the engagement that was happening and the development of the strategic plan, we did continue to work really under about 60 or so existing programs and initiatives. And last year, more than, I believe, 2,800 individual projects around the Columbia Basin region the Trust had the privilege of partnering on. I'm just drawing out a few examples here in the Valemount area, and I know Council will be familiar with these. The first there, I'm not going to speak to each of them, but ecosystem enhancement has been a priority for the past 3+ years. The Canoe Valley Wetland Connectivity Restoration Project is one example of that. I mentioned housing earlier and work that we've done. This is an example where the new, I believe there's 18 affordable rental homes, Valemount Cares, I believe, project, where we are contributing to solar installation as well as fiber optics to the housing. So it's not only the homes themselves, but putting solar in place for both climate and sustainability purposes and the connectivity that we all need to have where we live. A lot of work happening in childcare. So the Robson Valley Community Services Society created 32 new childcare spaces, and we had, I believe, contributed $300,000 to that. Seniors outreach, wildfire, and of course, as we talked about the heat that we're starting to experience now, it's a growing concern in communities again. There's been a lot of work done to support wildfire mitigation effort and readiness support. So in the instance here, the small community wildfire readiness support, the Regional District of Fraser Fort George, I believe, will be providing training and will purchase a structure protection unit and wildfire prevention and protection equipment for the village. And also in that space and community readiness support for the Valemount Community Hall. And I believe it was just over $130,000 to install a backup generator so that the community hall can act as a short-term emergency support services reception center. There's been support for land acquisition through VARDA. I believe it was also about $300,000 to secure access to the existing multi-use trail system, some support for the Robson Valley Community Kitchen, about $74,000, pardon me, and some outdoor recreation and job creation through support for crews for trail maintenance, creation and maintenance. So just a very quick overview of some of the work that was ongoing and will continue into the future. And I know I find it helpful at times to just look backwards a little bit at all the community successes. I think we often find ourselves looking forward and living the challenges of the day, but I do think it's important to just reflect back on how much really happens in our communities. And I am very proud to say the Trust is able to play a role in many of those projects. This is a slide that I introduced here just recently, and I want to draw out, I mentioned earlier that the health and resilience of the Columbia Basin Trust organization is an imperative under the new management plan. Just as a reminder, all the funding that is available to support the community work, some examples of which I just shared, has to come from the return on our investments. There are no tax dollars to Columbia Basin Trust. There is no rich benefactor who each year provides funding. We manage a portfolio of investments, and the largest component of that portfolio is our investment in 4 hydroelectric projects in the Columbia Basin region. And one of those projects, the Arrow Lakes Generating Station, located on the lower Arrow Lakes, has encountered some challenges. It's a 2-turbine hydroelectric generating facility. And we first discovered an issue with Unit 1, the first generating unit, as part of annual inspections in 2023, and had a considerable outage to address an issue. As we've come into this year, unfortunately, we've identified another issue with the second unit. The reason I raise this now and in this context is last year, the costs that we incurred to correct the issue and the lost revenue by not having that turbine available to generate power was largely covered by our insurers. It is much less clear whether that will be the case this year. We continue with our technical investigations to identify root cause, to assess whether it will be an insured risk. So we'll work with our insurers on that. But I do want to say that in the event it's not insured, there will be a significant negative impact to revenues to Columbia Basin Trust in the current year. And I can't get into the specifics right now, but when I say significant, I'm talking 8-figure impact. And that would mean there is a potential in the short term to some of our delivery of benefits work until such time as this second unit is back up and available to generate power. So I don't want to sound alarmist. This is not an existential threat to the organization or our future. It would be short-term in nature, but it is possible that we have to make some decisions on delivery of benefit programs and perhaps defer or reduce, or in some instances, cut funding to programs that we otherwise expected to be making available in the current year. Okay, I also mentioned earlier the different roles that the trust plays. Our relationship with local government is just so critically important to any success the trust may have. And when I talk about the different roles, that it really is embodied by our relationship with local governments. Local governments are one of our longest term delivery partners. And the example that I cite here on the slide is the READY program, previously called CIP in affected areas. That's the longest standing trust program, and it has always been in partnership with local governments. Local governments in some instances are funding recipients from the trust, and some project examples are cited here. It's also gone the other way, where local governments provide funding to trust-led projects. High-speed connectivity, our broadband initiative, is one of those examples. And then there's other ways that we have to work together to realize success in communities. Statutory right-of-way or licenses for trust infrastructure is just one of those examples. So I just really wanted to draw that out and say there's a richness to the relationship between this organization and local governments. And it's something that I hold quite dear, and it's something that I hope we can continue to benefit from well into the future. As I get to a close here, I would just encourage all of council, if you ever have any questions or ideas or thoughts or want to understand more about what the trust can support you with or on, please don't feel compelled to go to our website and try to navigate there to get answers. I really encourage you to call me at any time or email me at any time, or my colleagues that are listed on the slide here. Amy Amberzoni, who is our Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Angie Elsmore, who's the Community Liaison, whose geographic scope of responsibility includes Valemount. Please feel free, and in fact, I do more than that. I really encourage you to reach out, and always happy to have a conversation. So with that, go to questions, but maybe just before I do, I do just want to share with all the council the appreciation that I have and all of the staff and CBT have for the role of your worship as Vice Chair of Columbia Basin Trust. Owen, you are an incredibly thoughtful leader. You're admired by your colleagues, and it is just such a pleasure to work with you and learn from you on our board of directors. So thank you so much for your dedication.
Well, thank you very much, Johnny. Motion to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Mullock. Nice words at the end, Johnny, but we are restricted to the provincial wage maximum, so we really can't do anything about that. Questions for the delegation?
Can I take back my comments?
No. Questions for the delegation, comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. That was quite enlightening to hear some of the successes and some of the challenges that are never ending. So we look forward to the collaboration that you speak so highly of, to continue in the future. I really value that, and thank you.
Well, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, I guess my only comment is there's probably going to be a few concerned organizations with what's happening with Arrow Lakes. Just wondering, I guess there's no real timeline on when any real knowledge on that impact will kick in as far as downstream.
Yeah, I couldn't give a precise date, but I can give an indication. I strongly suspect everything hinges right now on some technical analysis, not to get too detailed, but metallurgical analysis on some components that failed. We expect to get those results in about mid-August. The insurance underwriters have said they need about 2 weeks to review that and put forward some opinions. So I suspect we would know with greater certainty in early mid-September.
Okay, thank you.
Any follow-ups?
Good year.
Johnny, I know you've watched the Founders video a couple of times, and I encourage everybody in this room to watch it. I've watched it about 37 times, and I get goosebumps every time I do watch it. And former director and founding MLA Corky Evans described the process of folks meeting in the room and coming to a decision of whether they wanted recompense or wanting to choose a path forward. And thankfully, they chose a path forward, and largely based on the impacts of the Columbia River Treaty. And as we hopefully, by year's end, come to some form of an agreement, can you differentiate for those that may not understand the relationship between the Columbia River Treaty and the role that the Columbia Basin Trust plays in the information gathering and forwarding to residents around the Columbia River Treaty?
Yeah, I'll try. So thank you. Yeah, I'll try to be brief. There can be confusion for any number of reasons as to the relationship between Columbia Basin Trust, the Columbia River Treaty, and the province of BC. And I would probably summarize by saying Columbia Basin Trust was created as a consequence of the Columbia River Treaty. It wasn't created as compensation for those consequences. It really was, exactly as you described, an explicit decision to look to the future, share in some of the benefits that were being realized by other parts of the province, bring them back to this region to help build a better future. So that is a message that we do share, but understandably there can be confusion over time. The relationship, though, is between Columbia Basin Trust and those, I would say at the moment, most by and large at the moment, are those that are negotiating the CRT, the renewed CRT. We have supported the CRT local government committee and members on that committee to be the forum through which residents can raise their concerns, share their views of the future, ultimately solicit feedback on recommendations that found their way to the negotiators. That was an important role for the trust, to be an advocate for the residents, if you will, to make sure that they had a forum through which they could express their views. We also provided funding for information sessions. This is a couple of years ago now, to make sure that residents had as much factual information as possible in order to provide fulsome and thoughtful feedback to the CRT local government committee. So a bit of a facilitator is how I would describe it between Basin residents and the CRT local government committee. And that's where we have an appropriate role. We're not at the table for the CRT. We have no insights into the renegotiation beyond that, which are made available to the broader public. But we want to make sure that there's a forum for Basin residents to be heard.
Great, thank you for the clarity. As there rightfully so, some confusion, and we appreciate the fulsome information gathered. Any other questions, administration? Thank you very much, Johnny. We really appreciated having you on with us today. Appreciate the update, the operational update, and looking forward to continue working together through these opportunities and these challenges.
Thank you. Have a great evening and a wonderful summer.
Stay cool.
Okay. Okay. Have a good night.
Questions, comments, discussion on the delegation? All in favor of receipt? It's carried. 5.1, proposed temporary use permit 2402 at 1380 King Road. Looking for a TUP 2402 for 1830 King Road, legally described as Lot 2, District Lot 7354. Caribou District Plan 27338, proposing a temporary use permit for a recreational vehicle to be used as a residence for a period of 3 years. The recommendation that it be denied. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Mullock. Discussion. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already dealt with this as far as moving forward from the need for the TUPs with the pipeline residency situation. So I think there are other options, and so I'll support recommendation.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I echo Councillor Pearson's remarks. I think there are other options. Hopefully that can resolve this accommodation issue.
Thank you. There's only quorum, so I'm not letting you back in twice. All in favor? Carried. Oh, question to administration. What is left on this, the current TUP? For my, for the 1380? Okay, it's expired. Okay, thank you. 5.2, proposed development permit 2403 for 1444 Fifth Avenue. Looking for a development permit 2403 for the property located at 1444 Fifth Avenue, legally described as Lot 1, District Lot 5708, Caribou District Plan BCP 35445 be approved with the following conditions. That an encroachment agreement be required for the parking along Fifth Avenue that is located on Village Road right-of-way, and that small vehicle parking only signs be posted for the parking located to the front of the building. Moved by Councillor Mullock, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Discussion? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, I mean, I support the request. I mean, I have little concerns in the parking situation. We dealt with parking on the other side of the street. I guess my biggest concern is we're losing the log cabin. A little piece of history that's going to go away, but other than that, I do support the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Mullock?
Again, yeah, I was interested to learn that it wasn't a historic building. You know, that was because that kind of weighed heavily, as well as you know, older buildings, because that one does that has been here a long time, but no, it's not suitable in its current state. So time to move on.
Very good. All in favor? Carried. And a new item added, 5.3, looking to council to authorize the mayor and corporate officer to sign the 2024-2034 Canada Community Building Fund Agreement on behalf of the Village of Valemount. Have you had a chance to review? Moved by Councillor Pearson, second by Councillor Mullock. Discussion? Councillor Pearson?
No, it's kind of nice to have a stable source of revenue for 10 years, and as far as we can tell, it's stable revenue. But yeah, no, that's great.
Perfect. Other discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Reading file. Anything council wishes to bring to surface? The reading file before the council reports?
Oh, you're right. My apologies. I'm one page ahead of you.
You're fast. Anything on the reading file? Then we'll,
Nice to see the water levels coming up in the reservoir.
yeah, I think the last forecast was 2 meters for this week. Plus 2 meters, not the other way around. Correspondence for action. For consideration 9.1, looking for the Village of Valemount to support the funding application from the Robson Valley Community Services to Northern Development Initiative Trust for the, quote, Swift Creek Learning and Recreation Improvements. Just looking for a letter of support. Moved by Councillor Mullock, second by Councillor Pearson. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Does anybody have a notice of motion to bring forward? Then we'll move to council reports. Caught up to Madam Administrator. We'll go. Councillor Pearson.
Coin toss.
Don't carry change anymore.
Pretty short. So June 28th, I attended the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association incoming officers meeting in Edmonton. I thank council for their support in attending this one. A lot of it was pretty standard, but 3 familiar resolutions were ratified to take to the respective provincial ministers, and they're all pretty familiar to us. Increased passing lanes, cellular connectivity, and improvements to Jasper National Park West Gate. That one in particular was kind of ironic. On my trip to Edmonton, it took me almost 20 minutes to get through the gate because, much like the grocery store, I picked the wrong lineup and sat for a period of time. So it'd be nice to see some movement there. So July 1st, Canada Day, attended the cake cutting with Acting Mayor Blanchette and Councillor Mullick. I think it went over really well. We had an option with cupcakes this year, so they were able to walk around, distribute cupcakes to seniors and those that had mobility issues, so it worked out well.
Like that.
Then earlier today, had a online meeting with the Northern Interior Rural Division of Family Practice Primary Care Network Steering Committee, discussing how we can move forward with healthcare in northern BC, and this covers basically from Williams Lake north of the whole province. So there's some very interesting discussions. So
Just 2/3 of the province.
2/3, not 2/3 of the population, but 2/3. That's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Mullick.
On July 1st, I attended the Canada Day celebrations at the museum along with Acting Mayor Blanchette and Councillor Pearson. I helped distribute those cupcakes and got to eat some cake too, and that was pretty special. There was a really good turnout. I guess that can be seen by the fact that they ran out of buns for the hot dogs and hamburgers they were selling. So a good trade was occurring there. Yeah, good cross section of people, lots of seniors, lots of kids, and always good to see. And you know, it's nice to get to meet with people on such a relaxed, comfortable day where you can sit and chat with people that you don't see very often, and get yeah, pretty special day. On July 4th, I attended a Valemount Entertainment Society meeting. That's it for me.
Thank you. Had a few things on June 27th, so I'll just go through them. I had an update from the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions and our partners at the University of Northern British Columbia on the Robson Valley Geohazards Project. Later that morning, I made introductions to Ken Kolesnikoff and Jim Fenton. That afternoon, I had to go to Prince George, so Councillor McLean was able to find it in their schedule to walk with them through the industrial park, provide some recommendations to the industrial park manager and his team on some, you know, low-hanging fruit. Those two gentlemen have been in the sawmilling industry since the 50s. Lots of knowledge there. As mentioned, I did duck out to go to Prince George for a forestry roundtable. It was spearheaded by Carrier Lumber, but supported by the Lheidli and Simp First Nation. So Chief Logan and Chief Lampro were in the same room with industry, as well as the Ministry of Forest, Sean Rice, who is the district manager. And then I came back here that same day to have a debrief with both Ken and Jim to receive their thoughts, as well as Councillor McLean. Shortly right after that, I went on vacation, so I thank you both for attending Canada Day celebrations with the Deputy Mayor Blanchette, as well as I think MLA Shirley Bond was here.
It was.
So thank you for that. July 3rd, we got back for a Tough City Radio Tofino interview with their mayor, Dan Law. Really fun, almost podcast-ish, where we talked everything local government. And then we met with the CAO and the Valemount Industrial Park Manager, Andy Hubble, around the dust abatement system for the specialty sawmill. July 8th, So yesterday, had our Columbia Basin Broadband Board meeting, and later that morning, had our weekly check-in with CIO Yansu. That's my report. Any questions, comments? Okay. The calendar of events is for your information, so we will move on to 14.1. Are there any public comments on items considered by council as part of the approved agenda? Looking to the full gallery. Not seeing any hands. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Pearson.
35. Johnny slid in 3, your worship.
I know he did.
Yes.
Did you like